Hello, my name is Anna and I am here to teach you how to better tune your violin. Whether you have been tuning your violin forever or are just learning, these are some tips that you should always keep in mind. First of all, you always want to start with your A string. This will help set the stage for the rest of your strings because it's kind of in the middle. So always start with your A string and then go to your D string, your G string, and then back up to your E string. Because the only reason you do that is because when you're tuning your D and G strings, it's very easy for your A to get back out of tune. So when you tune back to the E string, then you can tune your A again if it needs tuned. Next, you always, make no mistake about this, you always want to tune, when you're tuning, want to turn these pegs counterclockwise before you turn them clockwise. Whether you're trying to make them more flat or if you're trying to make them sharper, always turn back before you turn forward. This will help keep your strings intact better, and this will also help them not snap. The last thing you want to do is snap a string. Next, the one thing that we always talk about with tuning is the concept of perfect fifths. Perfect fifths just means, it's kind of hard to explain, but perfect fifths are just the difference between two strings. When you play them together, they should make a fairly happy sound, if you will. So for instance, if you can hear that, that sounds pretty nice. Now, if your E or your A is slightly out of tune, it's slightly off. You can kind of tell. So just keep perfect fifths in mind whenever you're tuning. Next, we want to talk a little bit about fine tuners. I only have one on my E string because the E string is the finest string. But if you have all four, then you're in good shape. This is just to fine tune, that's why they're called fine tuners. This is just to help fine tune those strings when you're not 100% there and your pegs, because if you move your pegs too much, then they tend to get out of tune easier and slip easier. So your fine tuners will be a big help to you for just the little hair smidge that you need, just a little higher or a little lower. While we're talking a little bit about having it just a hair higher or a hair lower, there is a little trick. There's a little trick of the trade, and that is where you're going to use your peg box and you're going to use your string itself to tune it. When you tighten the string a hair, you can press the string in the peg box if you want it to just get a little higher. This will just barely give you enough. Say you're in the middle of a performance or you are just right about to go on stage or something like that. If you just barely push inside the peg box, inside that string, or on top of that string, then it will just tighten it just a little bit and make it just a little bit higher. That's for those of you who drive yourself crazy with just the slightest out of tune sound. And if you want the string to be just a slight bit flat, then you just pull on the string. Doesn't matter which way you pull it, but whichever way you pull it, it'll help loosen that string up a little bit, and therefore you can have a little bit flatter. So start with your A string and then go down to your D, G, and then go back up to your E. Keep the concept of perfect fifths in mind. If they sound slightly off, like that, or instead of like that, that's what you want to hear. Also, always turn your pegs backwards. Don't go forwards first, especially if you're trying to make it higher. But always turn your pegs counterclockwise before you turn them clockwise. Keep those fine tuners right. You don't want by the way, you don't want your fine tuners too tight. If your fine tuner is too tight, then it's more likely to make your string snap, especially up at the top where you're playing. So if your fine tuner does get a little too tight, then loosen up your peg a little bit on that string. And last but not least, if you want a little bit sharper, press the string that you want sharper in the peg box. If you want it to be flat, then you pull on the string. So I hope that this is helpful to you, and I hope that you will continue to watch my videos.